Hello and welcome everyone to another virtual program by the Macular Degeneration Association. We're very pleased to have you. We want to remind everyone that this is just one of many of a series that's going to be coming on this year. So these are all live webinars that we will be doing with different doctors throughout the year. But we also will be doing live programs throughout the year. So please check our website of macularhope.org to find dates and times for not only the virtual programs, but also the in-person programs where you can come and see us in person. Today, we'd like to thank Regeneron, Apellis, Ocular Therapeutics, Merrick, and Notel Vision for giving us the funding to do programs like this. Without their generous support, it would be much harder to bring this information to you. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so if you do find any of the information helpful for today, or you want to give a donation to support work like this, please again visit us at www.macularhope.org. Now, today's webinar is going to be based on Unlocking the Secrets to Better Eye Health Through Nutrition, Part 2. Now, today, we're going to be having a continued conversation with Dr. Poteet. She's going to be covering more closely the need for supplementation and which one of those is best for eye health, as well as introducing the importance of vitamin B in maintaining optimal eye health. Now, Dr. Poteet earned her doctorate from the New England College of Optometry and went on to complete her residency in primary care and ocular disease through the VA medical system in Boston. But she didn't stop there. Driven by a passion for understanding and the deeper connection between the nutrition and eye health, she pursued a Master of Science in Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine. And in 2015, she achieved something truly rare, becoming a certified nutrition specialist. This is a widely considered the most rigorous nutrition certification, available to healthcare professionals. And to put that in perspective, fewer than 15 optometrists in the entire United States hold this cert credential. So, Dr. Poteet, you have our attention.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my slides. Okay, hi. I'm really excited to be here today. This is a follow-up on a lecture I gave a few weeks ago, Unlocking the Secrets to Better Eye Health Through Nutrition. I'm going to, in the beginning, kind of review a little bit of what we talked about last time, and then we'll dive into the nutraceuticals. Educational and medical disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed are those of the presenter and are based on the available scientific literature, clinical experience, and the presenter's interpretation of the evidence at the time of presentation. So I want to take a deep dive into something called inflammaging. Most chronic diseases have a component of inflammation. And chronic diseases of aging have a component called inflammaging. And one of the most powerful ways we can mitigate our inflammatory response and inflammaging is through what we feed ourselves, through nutrition. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So why does this matter? AMD, macular degeneration, is the leading cause of irreversible vision loss after 50 worldwide. It impacts independence and quality of life, and nutrition is modifiable and has been shown to support retinal health and resiliency. Again, the earlier we intervene, the more disease trajectory can be influenced, and it's never too late to start. So again, macular degeneration, one of the most common ocular diseases in the US and in the world. It accounts for about 15 to 20% of global blindness, and it's the leading cause of irreversible vision loss in adults. It's estimated that about 25% of macular degeneration cases are undiagnosed. So when you go to your eye doctor, or when your family members go to their eye doctor, always encourage them to ask about macular degeneration. So last lecture, I talked about the M&Ms of AMD, microbiome and mitochondria. And you may not know what either of those are. I'm going to just briefly touch on those. The microbiome, the gut microbiome specifically, is one of the major regulators of immune function and systemic inflammation. About 70% of our immune tissue is associated with the gut. Gut microbes produce metabolites like short-chain fatty acids. And these these influence inflammation, barrier integrity, oxidative stress, vascular health, and mitochondrial signaling. So mitochondria are tiny little powerhouses in the cells. They're like the cellular energy makers, but they do more than that. They also create cellular resiliency and help us function better. And mitochondrial dysfunction, when these mitochondria aren't working as well, it's increasingly recognized as a common threat underlying many chronic inflammatory diseases. And again, one of the most powerful ways we can support both the microbiome and the mitochondria is what we put at the end of our fork. So this is a busy slide. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. It just illustrates the gut microbiome mitochondria connection. A diet rich in colorful fruits and vegetables, a Mediterranean diet. Eat the rainbow is what we like to say. You want as many colorful fruits and vegetables as possible. And what this does is it feeds the good bacteria in our guts. And the good bacteria in our guts are vegetarians. They love fruits, vegetables. They love plant food. And when we feed those good bacteria, they produce things that really fuel our mitochondria and help our mitochondria function better. So the diet gut microbiome retinal disease, I got this information in ARVO this year, which is the Association for Research in Vision and Ophthalmology. And what the presenter said is a Mediterranean diet equals good bacteria, happy bacteria. And these happy bacteria in our guts actually protect our eyes and our brains. A standard American diet, the Western diet, high fat, high sugar, high processed foods, it creates kind of bad bacteria. And these bad bacteria produce substances that kind of worsen macular degeneration. So again, when I think about eating fruits and vegetables and the rainbow and fatty fish and nuts and seeds and olive oil, I think about, yes, I'm getting nutrients, but I'm also feeding my good bacteria. So again, Mediterranean style diet produces wonderful substances that create beneficial effects for the eyes and the brain. Ultra processed food, not very good. So again, just to review, eat for a healthy microbiome, increase consumption of plant foods. Fermented foods are amazing. Kefir, yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented vegetables. Try to cut out the processed foods and avoid unhealthy fats, sugars, artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners, you could spend all day talking about those. Those are extremely disruptive to the gut microbiome and just not good for us. So macular degeneration. So macular degeneration is characterized by the accumulation of something called drusen. So when your eye doctor looks in the back of your eye, they're going to see with macular degeneration small yellow deposits in their retinas. The drusen that accumulate represent, it's what we see clinically, but they represent a loss of cellular resiliency that's happening upstream. So remember, we talked about the mitochondria. One of the regulators of retinal health and resiliency is a layer of the retina called the retinal pigment epithelium. It is one of the richest in mitochondria of any tissue in the body. So when we support the mitochondria, we're supporting the retinal pigment epithelium, and we're working upstream to support the retina. So again, macular degeneration, it's what we're learning is not just a retinal disease, it's a systemic disease. It's an example of a disease of aging where oxidative stress and chronic inflammation play a central role. It is not simply a disease of aging, it's a disease of cellular resiliency. Again, the retina, just I was talking about that beautiful layer of the retinal pigment epithelium. It's one of the most metabolically active tissues in the body. It has one of the highest oxygen consumption rates per gram, making it particularly vulnerable to oxidative stress. So AMD is a multifactorial disease that represents a convergence of mitochondrial insufficiency or dysfunction, lipid oxidation pathology, complement-mediated parainflammation, extracellular matrix aging, and impaired metabolic coupling. And that sounds like a lot of words, but it's a convergence of many pathways: oxidative stress, inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and vascular compromise. So I want to talk about the age-related eye disease studies. So the National Eye Institute and the National Institutes of Health in 1992 through 2001 conducted an age-related eye disease study. These studies represent some of the longest and most influential nutrition-based randomized controlled trials ever conducted. And what these trials, these landmark studies, followed participants for nearly 2 decades, providing rare long-term data on nutrition and chronic disease progression. So these studies changed the way we practice. Their original AREDS trials established that targeted antioxidant and mineral supplementation could reduce the risk of progression to advanced macular degeneration approximately 25% in high-risk individuals. And that's huge. Before the AREDS trials came out, all we really had to offer patients for those earlier and intermediate stages of macular degeneration was saying, don't smoke, eat a healthy diet. But now, because of the AREDS trials, it is our standard of care to prescribe a nutraceutical for intermediate macular degeneration and beyond. So the AREDS and AREDS 2 trials, these are both trials that were conducted back to back by the National Eye Institute. And the original AREDS trials showed us that supplementation with the formulation containing vitamin C, vitamin E, beta carotene, zinc, and copper reduced the rate of intermediate to advanced macular degeneration by about 25%. This is the trial that made supplement counseling part of macular degeneration management. The AREDS 2 was a follow-up trial. And what the AREDS 2 trial did, it tested a few different things. This trial asked whether adding lutein zeaxanthin and or omega-3 fatty acids to the original AREDS formula would further reduce disease progression. And the key finding was that adding lutein and zeaxanthin, replacing the beta carotene, showed a greater reduction of risk of progression. So just to look at the different participants, the original AREDS trial enrolled a much broader AMD category, including those without macular degeneration. The AREDS 2 participants all had macular degeneration, and every single AREDS 2 participant was given some type of the AREDS vitamins, either the AREDS original formula or one of the other formulas, the AREDS 2. And key findings from the AREDS 2 trial, and again, the original AREDS trials changed the way we practice. The AREDS 2 trials offered even added benefit. The original AREDS trials, beta carotene was used because lutein and zeaxanthin weren't commercially available for supplements. By the time the AREDS 2 trial came about, lutein and zeaxanthin were available, and because of a worry or risk of beta carotene increasing lung cancer in smokers, beta carotene was replaced with lutein and zeaxanthin. By replacing the beta carotene with lutein and zeaxanthin, the results of the AREDS 2 trial showed an 18% risk reduction of progression on top of the original AREDS formula. So this is a really big deal. Also a 22% risk reduction of neovascular macular degeneration. Again, these AREDS trials, both AREDS and AREDS 2, had about over 4,000 participants in each one of these trials. Long-term randomized controlled trials. The scientific rigor of the AREDS trials was practice changing. And, there's a lot of nutrition trials that come out. But as far as the scientific rigor, the AREDS trials changed the way we practice, and they changed our standard of care. So when you go to your eye doctor and the eye doctor looks at the back of your eyes and they say, oh, I see some drusen, you have intermediate macular degeneration based on what they're seeing. If you have, the right amount, the right type of drusen, it's our standard of care. It's our standard of care to prescribe an AREDS2 supplement. And this is from the NIH and the National Eye Institute's data. So if you have intermediate macular degeneration and you're not taking an AREDS2 supplement, you should be taking it. Another thing that's really important to remember about the AREDS2 trials, 90% of the participants in the AREDS2 trials were taking a Centrum Silver multivitamin. And this is because the doctors that were conducting the trial gave the participants an option of taking a multivitamin along with the formulation that they were going to take. And so this is something really important to remember. The multivitamin doesn't replace the AREDS2. The AREDS2 doesn't replace the multivitamin. You can take both together. So 10 years after the AREDS2 trial, the National Eye Institute conducted a follow-on study to look at 10 years data out. And again, it confirmed what the AREDS2 trial showed, 10 to 20% additional reduction in risk of progression to late AMD versus the original AREDS formula. And it maintained efficacy and safety even after 10 years. Okay, so this is a really, really, really big deal. So anybody with intermediate macular degeneration should be on an AREDS2 supplement. So there are a lot of eyes walking around that have macular degeneration that have never been diagnosed. This was a study that looked at a cross-sectional study of primary eye care practices in Birmingham, Alabama. And what it showed is many people with macular degeneration are undiagnosed and not getting the recommended supplements. So in this study, 24.8% of eyes had macular degeneration but were not diagnosed, and 30% of the undiagnosed macular degeneration eyes had large drusen. So again, the prevalence of undiagnosed macular degeneration was not different between optometry and ophthalmology. So both specialties alike are missing a lot of macular degeneration. So I tell my family, I tell my friends, when you go to your eye exam, ask about macular degeneration. How do my retinas look? That's important. So macular degeneration, again, is managed through progressively escalating interventions. We know with moderate macular degeneration, that's when we start the AREDS2 supplement. And the AREDS2 supplement's been shown to reduce the risk of progression to from moderate to advanced macular degeneration. But if we want to look at the drivers again of macular degeneration, oxidative stress, inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, vascular compromise. This is a busy slide. I got a little help with ChatGPT with this slide, but it basically is just showing the self-perpetuating cycle of mitochondrial dysfunction and age-related macular degeneration, and why we're going to start talking about B vitamins, why B vitamins have entered the picture. So you may have heard or seen ads for PreserVision AREDS 3. And when we hear AREDS, AREDS 2 has been such a foundation for macular degeneration. So when you hear AREDS 3, what is AREDS 3? What does this mean? Why are we talking about B vitamins? So B vitamins support essential metabolic and antioxidant functions. There are 8 essential water-soluble B vitamins. And we say essential because we need to get them from diet. And deficiencies of B vitamins are really common. About 10 to 20% of the US population has a B vitamin deficiency. Even more have an insufficiency. So there is a difference between a frank deficiency and an insufficiency. And again, even more have an insufficiency. B vitamins are necessary for proper mitochondrial functioning and cellular support. B vitamins are not eye vitamins in the traditional antioxidant sense. But they are essential for every biochemical pathway in the body. They're metabolic cofactors that support 1-carbon metabolism, homocysteine regulation, methylation, vascular integrity, glutathione biology, and mitochondrial energy production. And these pathways are increasingly becoming relevant to macular degeneration. Addressing these pathways allows us to think in a more upstream manner and with the hope of changing the disease trajectory. So again, the talk on B vitamins is exciting to me because it's allowing us to intervene at the level of cellular energetics before structural damage occurs. Again, approximately 10 to 20% of the US population has a B vitamin deficiency. Insufficiencies are much more common. B vitamins are integral to many aspects of ocular health, to mitochondrial functioning, to oxidative stress, to homocysteine homeostasis, neurotropic effects, and retinal protection. So there are a wealth of studies that report a protective effect of B vitamin levels in macular degeneration. I'm just going to go over 3 of these, and this is a very busy slide. The first study I want to go through is a study, and this was a randomized control trial. This was the first randomized evidence suggesting B vitamin supplementation may reduce AMD incidence. It's the Women's Antioxidant and Folic Acid Cardiovascular Study, the WAFAX trial. It was a randomized control trial, 5,400 women who received a combination therapy of folic acid, B6, B12, or placebo. The median follow-up, 7.3 years. And the findings, it showed a 34% reduction in macular degeneration risk and a 41% reduction in visually significant macular degeneration. The strengths of this study, it was a prospective randomized design, long follow-up, clinically meaningful outcomes. Limitations, it was a cardiovascular cohort. It wasn't retina specific, mostly women, but the magnitude of benefits seen in the WAFAX was surprisingly large. We're going to switch now and talk about the Blue Mountain Eye Study. The Blue Mountain Eye Study, one arm of the Blue Mountain Eye Study looked at homocysteine, folate, vitamin B12, and 10-year incidence of macular degeneration. This was a population-based Australian cohort. Key findings: low serum B12 is associated with a 2-fold increased macular degeneration risk, increased risk of early, late, and any macular degeneration, and vitamin deficiencies are associated with macular degeneration. And I want to mention something about low serum B12. Low serum B12 is also a risk factor for cognition. And I've got some slides on that in just a moment. So Blue Mountain Eye Study continued, followed older adults in Australia for 10 years and measured serum homocysteine, serum folate, serum B12, dietary intake of folate and B12, and self-reported supplement use. Key results: higher homocysteine, and we're going to go over homocysteine in just a minute, but higher homocysteine, higher AMD risk. Each 1 standard deviation increase in homocysteine raised the risk of early and any AMD by 33%. And that's huge. Vitamin B12 deficiency showed a higher AMD risk. B12 less than 185 showed an increased risk of early AMD by about 58%, late AMD by about 156%, and any AMD by 82%. Folate deficiency, higher AMD risk. Folate less than 11, 75% greater risk of early AMD and 89% greater risk of any AMD. So Blue Mountain Eye Study continued. This is the arm that looked at self-reported B12 supplement use. And this showed a lower AMD risk. Participants who reported taking B12 supplements had a 42% lower risk of early AMD, 63% lower risk of late AMD, and a 47% lower risk of any AMD. And again, this was a prospective trial. It wasn't a randomized control trial. We're going to shift to the third one I wanted to mention, the third trial, the Eleanor study. B vitamins and the incidence of age-related macular degeneration. This was a French prospective cohort of adults greater than or equal to 73 years. Intervention: serum B9 concentration and dietary intake of B5 and B6. And findings: risk of advanced macular degeneration decreased by about 51% with normal serum B9 and about 28% with a greater dietary intake of B5 and B6. So this suggests nutritional status may influence macular degeneration progression, not just incidence. So many of us are at a high risk of a B vitamin deficiency. Up to about 20% of older adults may have subclinical B12 deficiency. And I'm going to show you a slide in a moment that shows you that if you have the low normal range from Quest for serum B12, you're most likely still deficient. B12 deficiency raises homocysteine levels, and this is associated with microvascular injury in the eye. Another group that's high risk for B vitamin deficiencies are vegetarians and vegans. Vitamin B12 is primarily obtained from animal-based sources. B12 is not naturally found in plant foods. The third group is metformin. Metformin depletes levels of B12 in a dose-dependent manner. Bariatric surgery, people that have had bariatric surgery. And I want to add GLP-1s to this. People that are whose eating and food intake has been compressed, they're not eating as much. They're likely to be deficient in B vitamins. And remember, there's a difference between a frank deficiency and an insufficiency, and insufficiencies are a lot more common, even more so. So this is an important slide to me because I want to talk about not just the retina, but cognition. You know, the beautiful thing about nutrition and nutraceuticals is that when we feed ourselves wonderful plant-based foods, Mediterranean diet, fatty fish twice a week, we take our supplements for our retinas. We're not just helping the retina, we're helping the brain. When we address the health of our bodies through nutrition, we're not just affecting one organ, we're affecting the whole body, everything. And so this is a reference range from Quest for vitamin B12 levels. And the range is 200 to 1100 picograms per milliliter. That's a wide range. And what studies have shown is patients with values between 200 and 400 in the low normal may still experience neuropsychiatric and hematological abnormalities and cognition. Normal versus optimal, and this is all about B12. In the US, the cutoff for B12 deficiency status is defined as less than 148 picomoles per liter. We know that 200 to 400, you can still have issues with cognition. This value is simply calculated as 3 standard deviations below the US population, independent of clinical observations. So when you go to your primary care doctor and they're measuring your B12 levels, ask to see the number. And better yet, ask them to measure 2 other things called homocysteine and MMA. So this was just published in SciTech Daily. It's referencing a study that I'm going to actually show you in just a moment. Scientists just found a major problem with vitamin B12 guidelines, and your brain might be at risk. New research suggests that today's B12 guidelines might be outdated, even normal levels could still harm brain function. And this is important because cognitive decline is something that none of us want to experience in our golden years. Scientists warn that subtle cognitive decline linked to B12 insufficiency might affect more people than expected. So what this clickbait, so to speak, is referencing is this study right here that was published in the Annals of Neurology 2025. And what this study found, vitamin B12 level association with functional and structural biomarkers of central nervous system injury in older adults. So this study showed that normal B12 may not be optimal B12. Emerging evidence suggests neurological dysfunction may occur at vitamin B12 levels still considered normal. Serum B12 alone may miss a functional insufficiency. Functional markers such as methylmalonic acid, homocysteine, and hollow transcobalamin may better reflect true tissue sufficiency. So clinical takeaway, normal lab values don't always equal neurological sufficiency. And for high energy tissues, including the brain and the retina, this is especially important. So again, I couldn't do this lecture without talking about cognition and B12 because it is so important. Again, normal B12 levels may still miss a functional deficiency. So again, multiple studies support the role of B vitamins in reducing incidence and progression of AMD. I want to say a very important point. B vitamins operate synergistically. They operate more like a symphony than soloists. They all work together beautifully and they're interconnected. So we never just want to supplement high doses of one B vitamin without doing a B complex or all of them. So, and these studies are what helped inform the ingredient profile for the ARIDS 3 formulation. So again, B vitamins are water soluble, generally considered safe. Talk to your primary care doctor before you start supplementing because there are things to consider. Liver disease, kidney disease, neuropathy. Talk to your doctor before you start any supplements. And I'd like to add cancer to this list as well. Folate supports DNA synthesis and cell replication. It's needed. Adequate folate is protective. We're talking about B9, but there's ongoing debate about whether excessive folic acid may be harmful. Again, so that's why always talk to your primary care doctor. So again, B vitamins in clinical practice, safety, not simplicity. They're water soluble. Excess is secreted by the kidneys. They're very relevant to the retina for the mitochondrial demand, for homocysteine and vascular health. But we should consider taking them all together. So again, retinal health is dependent on adequate levels of homocysteine. We're going to talk about homocysteine. It's a modifiable risk factor linked to AMD risk and progression. And this is where B vitamins come in. B vitamins are necessary to lower homocysteine. Select B vitamin supplementation may help reduce homocysteine, a modifiable AMD risk factor. And so we're learning now, and in the data, it's emerging that homocysteine levels are associated with an increased early macular degeneration risk and faster disease progression. Targeting homocysteine in early macular degeneration provides an opportunity to intervene at that more upstream biological level. So again, a little bit more about homocysteine. And you know, we talked about cognition and B12 just then. I want to talk about homocysteine. Homocysteine is a strong, independent risk factor for cognitive decline. Again, so when you're supporting the retina by lowering homocysteine, you're also supporting the brain. And you know, the retina is part of the brain, but homocysteine is a byproduct of the metabolism of protein and DNA. Vitamin B9, which is folate, B12, cobalamin, and B6 are needed to clear homocysteine. Elevated levels of homocysteine result in cell and tissue damage, increased levels of oxidative stress, and endothelial damage. And it's related to cardiovascular disease, kidney and neurodegenerative damage, and AMD. And again, you have to have sufficient levels of B vitamins to clear homocysteine. Insufficiency of B vitamins has been shown to result in elevated levels of homocysteine. So B and 12 support remethylation. They help convert homocysteine back to methionine, supporting methylation capacity and reducing the accumulation of homocysteine, while B6 supports transsulfuration, helps move homocysteine towards cysteine and glutathione synthesis, linking B vitamin status to antioxidant defense. So again, B vitamins may enhance macular degeneration prevention and early progression. This is just referring back to the WAFAX trial. B6, B9, B12 after 7 years showed to decrease the rate of development of AMD by about 34%. So ARIDS 2 vitamins, they increase macular pigment to filter blue light. They protect the photoreceptors. They reduce lipofuscin accumulation and they reduce mitochondrial stress. B vitamins, they improve retinal pigment epithelium integrity and health. And remember, I said the retinal pigment epithelium is one of the richest in mitochondria of any tissue in the body. It keeps the retinal cells healthy, improves mitochondrial metabolism, reduces drusen, and reduces blood vessel damage by reducing homocysteine. And both together reduce inflammation and reduce oxidative stress. And remember one of the very first slides I showed you that talked about inflammation and inflammaging. So thinking beyond AREDS2, and again, AREDS2 is our backbone. It is our standard of care to prescribe an AREDS2 vitamin for intermediate macular degeneration and beyond. Thinking about the new AREDS3 allows us to start thinking about supporting cellular metabolism at kind of an earlier stage. Always talk to your primary care doctor before starting higher dose B vitamins, but their potential is there to really be impactful, and I'm really excited about this. So again, the AREDS3 builds on the AREDS2 clinically proven backbone, and then adds a B complex. And again, I have a lot of gratitude to Dr. Emily Chu and the National Eye Institute and National Institutes of Health for the AREDS trials. They changed the way we practice. They are one of the most rigorous and clinically meaningful nutrition trials, and one of the most practice-changing nutrition trials that we have. And they continue to show us not just supplements, but dietary patterns that support macular health. And we know that a Mediterranean style diet, fatty fish twice a week, that's the ticket to healthy macula, healthy mitochondria, healthy microbiome. So I wanted to put a few more studies here. This was an interesting study done. Again, it was only 145 patients, where the AREDS trials had thousands, almost 10,000 between the AREDS and AREDS2. But this is 145 patients with dry AMD, and it took the base AREDS2 components and added something called astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is a very potent carotenoid. Like lutein and zeaxanthin, it is a carotenoid, but it's one of the few that can actually also cross the blood-brain barrier. So this study that was done in Italy took the baseline AREDS2 components, added astaxanthin to it, and saw a significant improvement in visual acuity versus the non-supplement group. 80.2% of patients showed maintenance or even improvement of visual acuity. 88.7% of patients showed maintenance or even improvement in contrast sensitivity, with the addition of astaxanthin. And these results were quite impressive. Again, small group, but stabilized or improved visual acuity versus controls, significant improvement in contrast sensitivity versus controls, and higher patient-reported visual function and quality of life scores versus controls. I get asked a lot about mesozeaxanthin. Mesozeaxanthin is another carotenoid that's extremely important to the macula. Mesozeaxanthin is not found in our food. Mesozeaxanthin is converted from lutein, from adequate levels of lutein in the retina, and it is important as well. So this was a study that's often referred to when we look at mesozeaxanthin, the CREST AMD trial, the Central Retinal Enrichment Supplementation Trials. And the purpose was determining whether lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin improve macular pigment, optical density, contrast sensitivity, and visual performance in early AMD. It was double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled, duration 24 months. Participants had early AMD, and the arms looked at lutein, zeaxanthin plus mesozeaxanthin. Second arm was just lutein and zeaxanthin without meso, and the third was a placebo. Primary endpoints, MPOD and contrast sensitivity. Secondary endpoints, best corrected visual acuity, glare disability, and serum carotenoids. And the key findings were that the macular pigment increased in all the carotenoid groups, both the lutein and zeaxanthin and the lutein and zeaxanthin with meso. The largest central macular pigment gain was with the meso-containing formulation. And the contrast sensitivity improved, especially at mid-high spatial frequencies, no safety concerns. So this was positive for meso. Both the lutein and zeaxanthin and the lutein zeaxanthin meso both had increases in their macular pigment. But this study basically showed that with the addition of meso, you get a little more increase in macular pigment, which was good. So what the researchers did is they did a secondary analysis where they looked at comparing original ARIDS2 formula with ARIDS2 formula with added meso. And what they were looking at to see is if does adding meso to the ARIDS2 formula give additional benefit. And this study was interesting. This secondary analysis was interesting. Secondary analysis of the randomized controlled trial data set showed no significant improvement in visual acuity and contrast sensitivity in AMD progression with the addition of meso zeaxanthin to the ARIDS2 formula. So no additive effect of meso zeaxanthin when layered onto the ARIDS2 base formula. So again, meso may enhance macular pigment in isolation, but does not improve outcomes when added to the ARIDS2 nutrient matrix. It's just something to consider. Other studies may show a benefit. This one, it just didn't. So there is so much noise in the world of supplements, so much noise. I have been reading supplement studies for 20 years, and it is overwhelming for me. I keep always going back to the National Eye Institute and National Institutes of Health ARIDS trials. And that's the gold standard, and that's what I go to. So again, just to remind everyone, nutrients act synergistically like a symphony. Nutrition doesn't work like a solo performance. It works like a symphony. Each nutrient plays a different instrument, and when they work together in harmony, the protective effects are far greater than any one nutrient alone. Retinal protection truly depends on a coordinated biological systems of antioxidant defense, mitochondrial energy production, vascular perfusion, inflammation control, membrane integrity, light filtration, cellular repair, and nutrients act on all these pathways. The retinal symphony, the beautiful carotenoids, lutein, zeaxanthin, mesozeaxanthin are the violins. They filter blue light, they quench oxidative stress, they provide structural and antioxidant protection, they concentrate directly in the macula, and they help stabilize photoreceptor environments. But violins alone do not make a symphony. Then you have the omega-3s, the percussion and rhythm, and they provide membrane fluidity and help regulate inflammation. DHA is a major structural fat in photoreceptors. They support synaptic signaling. They help maintain retinal cell membrane integrity. Without rhythm, the orchestra loses coordination. And then you have zinc and trace minerals, the brass section. They act as enzymatic cofactors. Zinc participates in antioxidant enzyme systems. It supports vitamin A transport and retinal metabolism. It helps stabilize oxidative defense pathways. The music becomes weak without support from the brass. The B vitamins are the piano and energy core. They support mitochondrial bioenergetics and vascular health. B6, folate, B12 regulate homocysteine, support methylation and ATP production, help maintain microvascular perfusion, and without energy, the orchestra can't perform. And then you have the polyphenols and Mediterranean diet components. They are the conductor. These dietary patterns coordinate the entire inflammatory environment. Olive oil polyphenols, colorful fruits and vegetables, legumes, fish, nuts, herbs. The Mediterranean diet is powerful because it delivers networks of interacting nutrients, not isolated compounds. Before I end my lecture, I do want to mention one thing. Oh, one more study, sorry. This just came out. So I had to share it. This was just published 2026 in the journal Nutrients. 15-year follow-on study that showed eggs and Alzheimer's disease in a 40,000 person cohort followed for 15 years. Egg intake tracked with substantially lower Alzheimer's incidence in a dose response pattern. The mechanism is biochemically plausible, supported by other lines of evidence, and consistent with what we know about acetylcholine and brain carotenoid status. Egg yolk is rich in choline, lutein, and DHA. And so don't be afraid to eat eggs. Boil some eggs, put them in the refrigerator, eat 5 a week if you're not sensitive to them. You're going to help your brain. So again, foods for eye health: leafy greens, colorful vegetables, fatty fish, eggs, nuts, and seeds. One quick note about the fatty fish: it's the fish itself, not the fish oil, but fatty fish twice a week. That's been shown to be protective to the eye and the brain. I'm not saying fish oil is not protective, but the fatty fish is consistent in the data to be what is protective for heart, for brain, for retina. So fatty fish twice a week. And I think that's it. So thank you so much for listening today and being patient with me while I work through some technical issues that I always seem to have. So.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Poteet. We do have about 15 questions currently. So everyone, if you do have a question and you'd like that to be answered by the doctor, please fill those in now in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. She will be reading those off and then answering them in order.
The first one: do you recommend taking a multivitamin or individual vitamins? My answer to that, it depends. It depends on your diet status, how well you eat. Most of us are deficient. We have to look at the ARIDS 2 trials. 90% of those participants were taking a multivitamin in addition to the ARIDS 2 formula. What do you think about the new formula that's come out since ARIDS 2? If you're talking about the Preservision ARIDS 3, that is the ARIDS 2 backbone with the addition of B vitamins. Julie, oh, please don't apply. Oh, thank you so much, Holly. Thank you so much. Can eating a Mediterranean diet significantly slow the progression of dry AMD? So if you look at the literature and the data, and what the data has shown from multiple studies, is you can get up to a 41% risk reduction in progression by following a Mediterranean diet. And there are people that do everything right and eat as cleanly and a wonderful, beautiful Mediterranean diet and still progress. But your greatest chance is to really focus on that Mediterranean diet. Does AMD always progress? No, it doesn't always progress. So, but you can do everything right and it still does. Sometimes we just don't know. I was taking the ARIDS 2 and now switched to ARIDS 3. How will the difference work with my one eye being intermediate and the other eye is just beginning? If you look at the data, the early data, what we're hoping to see, and what mechanistically we're hoping to see, is slowing of progression, intervening at an upstream level, supporting cellular resiliency. But yeah, that's what we're hoping to see. And always talk to your primary care doctor when switching vitamins. So I've seen the Cleveland Mediterranean diet is the best one to follow. I can't answer to that. The Cleveland, if you're talking about the Cleveland Clinic, they're a wonderful resource. A Mediterranean diet, classic Mediterranean diet, and there's different definitions, but colorful fruits and vegetables, fatty fish, olive oil, nuts. On the Mediterranean diet, it states you can eat 18 ounces of beef or pork. Is 18 ounces a week okay to consume with dry macular degeneration? I will tell you, I listened to a lecture the other day from the National Eye Institute, Dr. Emily Chu, and she specifically states that beef, that red meat is it's not good to eat with macular degeneration. It's a risk. It was shown to increase the risk of progression in their post hoc analysis. I'm not saying all red meat is bad. I think a little bit is good and fine. But the more fish you eat, the better. You just have to be careful with too much red meat. It's interesting. Red meat is so high in certain B vitamins, and some red meat is good, but too much is not good. So how much probiotic yogurt should you eat? You have to watch the sweeteners in probiotic yogurt. I would try to get the unsweetened version, or just, no added sugar with it, and eat it with blueberries. there are some people that eat, like I eat a cup a day. So will this recording be available? I don't know. I think so.
Yes, it will be.
Okay. Is there such a thing as low cholesterol, and what would the effects be on my dry AMD? That's an excellent question. And, you know, I'm not 100% sure about that. But the National Eye Institute is still looking at data from the ARIDS trials, gene data, genomics data, cholesterol, blood. It's still considering all these different factors. And so stay tuned. Stay tuned. So ARIDS 2 so you can get the ARIDS 2 contains 80 milligrams daily of zinc. That seems high to me. Is there a reason it's almost double than the MDR? So that was a question that was looked at in some of the ARIDS data. And so ARIDS 2 there are formulas you can buy that don't have the higher zinc in it that you can get with the lower zinc, with the 20 milligrams of zinc. And I often recommend the lower zinc version to a lot of patients, depending on their diet, depending on what they're eating. In the ARIDS 2 trials, lowering the dose of zinc did not lower the efficacy of the ARIDS 2 supplement. So when in doubt, I would go with the lower dose of zinc in the ARIDS 2. So this is from Karen. I have dry macular degeneration for 13 years and have been getting NAD infusions quarterly for several years. My Freddie have stopped progressing and fell to the bottom of my ocean scan in both eyes. Have there been any clinical trials using NAD for eye health? Not that I'm aware of, but I'm not aware of any. But mechanistically, I think that's a great thing, and if it's working for you, I would keep doing it. So, are nuts a good substitute for meat? Nuts are not high in protein like meat is. So again, some meat is okay. It just depends. We kind of need both. We need both. So, in my opinion, I've started eating 5 to 6 servings of vegetables per day and 3 servings of fruit. Is this enough, or do I need to add additional vegetables or fruits? That's a good question. I think that the diversity of the vegetables and fruits is just as important. It's very important. And in that, I would make sure you're eating at least a cup of greens a day. Even better if they're greens that contain sulforaphane, because that's going to boost something called glutathione as well. So, is flax oil good for vegetarians avoiding fatty fish? That could be a whole other lecture. The conversion of the usable omega-3 from flax oil is pretty slow and not very efficient. You can get omega-3s. You can get DHA from algae oil. So yeah. I think that's it.
All right, last chance, everyone. Any more questions coming in? Otherwise, we're going to let Dr. Poteet go.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. You know, patients, they're my passion. But I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to patients and their families. So
we always appreciate having you with us. You always bring
you.
a lot of really good information to our members.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see anything else popping up. So Dr. Poteet, again, we want to thank you so much for all that you've done for us today. A lot of really good information for us to mull over and to hopefully take advantage of. So if you found this information helpful, go ahead and follow Dr. Poteet and continue to check back with us, because we will be listing this on our website under our previous webinars. So if you missed something and you want to get a refresher on what she talked about today, check back on our website, www.macularhope.org, and find that, as well as future dates for other webinars and in-person programs. So if there's nothing else, Dr. Poteet, we will say good day and hope everyone has a wonderful one themselves.